Hello, Earthlings, and welcome back to Sound Mind. Today we continue the Berkeley Final Recital video series that'll be happening throughout this month in August with the second song, Monkian Around. If you couldn't tell from the title, it was written in the style of Thelonious Monk. Specifically, it was written for a class taught by Greg Hopkins on post-bebop harmonic innovation. I think we spent a month or maybe a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks, talking about Thelonious Monk. And then at the end of that section of the class, we all wrote Monkian tunes. And I had actually wanted to write a song in the style of Monk called Monkian Around for some time. And I used most of the things I learned about him in the class, along with some other things I noticed from listening to multiple Monk songs, to basically concoct this spoof of Monk. One of the first things we talked about his writing style that I hadn't previously picked up from just listening to his music was what Greg called generic riffs, like this one from Rhythm-a-Ning. He's a very visceral kind of teacher, so he just said, "Who wrote that? I don't know," after he played it. And if you don't play it like Monk, it doesn't really sound like Monk. It's what comes after that gives it the Monk signature. Awkward pause. Who else leaves a bar and a half of nothing at the end of a section? I mean, he does it in Straight No Chaser as well, you know. And that's why some people fill it in, like, which I've done myself, but the borderline awkward silence is a really Monk thing. Another thing you might have noticed from those two examples is that he doesn't use a wide variety of motives in the same song. He pretty much uses one and just repeats it and develops it, especially in a lot of his AABA songs, where the bridge is usually just one of the motives from the A section. Like Rhythm-a-Ning, the bridge is entirely, it's just repeating that motive on different notes that you heard. And the bridge is just... Which leads me to a bloody obvious aspect of Monk's style, dissonance. That last bit was a whole tone scale over your standard rhythm changes bridge, which makes some of the notes clash with the chords and others not. Like if we were to try to analyze that last phrase over the F7, it'd be, okay, that's a 13, that's a pretty conventional tension. What? Hang on, that's a major 7 over a dominant 7 chord, you can't do that. Flat 9, okay, that's passable. Sharp 9, deliciously crunchy, but still passable. That's a 4, you can't do that. And that's a sharp 11, that's a tritone, the devil's interval. One of my favorite examples of Monk taking one motive from the A section and just developing it for the bridge is on Evidence, where it's not even a motive, it's just one note, but it's that note's placement in the bar that kind of makes it a motive. Basically, the A section is a bunch of seemingly random stabs. And for the bridge, he just takes that first stab and just moves it up by steps 8 times. Although when Monk writes a ballad, like Round Midnight or Panonica, the sort of cheeky wrong note dissonance turns into weird and wonderful modulations. One of my favorite ones is at the end of Panonica, where it's one of those surreptitious modulations I mentioned in the video where I talked about Twilight and Star Burn, link on the end screen, where you don't really hear the key change. It's at the end of the A section where it goes. That last chord is apparently one of Monk's favorite chords. It's a D flat major 7 with a sharp 11. Again, the tritone. This is going back to C, which is the key he starts in, but the actual preceding cadence is in D flat. He just throws in a G7, which is the dominant of C, at the end, so that suddenly when he hits the D flat, it doesn't feel like 1. It feels like flat 2, which it is. If he had made it sound like a tonic, it would have been something like. He could have gone to C at the end, which would also sound like a tonic if he had kept the G7 in there. You don't really hear the key change. It's just. Because the pull of the G chord is so strong, you just expect C, even though you just heard the dominant of D flat. So when you do get to the D flat, it's less stable. So when I wrote Monkian Around, I tried to put a lot of those things I had learned about and things I had just discovered from listening. So I started with a generic sounding riff, which is kind of a monkified version of Short and Bread. I made some of the intervals smaller, and I put in one of those repeated triplet notes, which it happens in his song Nutty, or, Monk's Dream. So I did that, and then I just harmonized it a sixth below. Easy way to harmonize anything. Then I repeated it a step up. So that was one motive. Now for the other motive, that's also a pretty generic motive, but I monkified it by harmonizing it in seconds. And moving it around the bar. And also, in true monk fashion, some of those notes clash with the chords they're under, like there's that major 7 on a dominant 7 chord, and the harmony is going, which is less clashy, but I don't think the Clash would ever put that chord in one of their songs. So you've got there's that D flat chord again with the sharp 11 that is in Panonica and a lot of other monk tunes, and it's both preceded and followed by a borderline awkward pause. It's like so for the bridge, I knew that I would be developing that motive. So for the first half, I did a cadence to the 4 chord. It's your standard way to begin a bridge. That's what I initially wrote. And then for the second half, I decided to do what Monk did in Well You Needn't, where he has dominant chords going up chromatically and then down chromatically in the second half. So I just went. Conveniently landing on the dominant, which leads us back to the A section. And I just repeated that motive going down in half steps. Was what I initially wrote, although I later changed it to. So after I showed the initial version of that to both Greg and Ein Inserto, who I had a directed study with at the time, they both said it was really good, really monkish, but it was lacking something they couldn't put their finger on. And I agreed, exactly. There was something missing I couldn't quite put my finger on, so I just added one note on the front of the A section, just a little pickup, which actually seemed to do a lot, going from to, it seemed small, but it made quite a big difference. And then I remembered something Ein had pointed out about the bridge, which is that in my original draft, all of the repetitions of the motive had all ended on offbeats. None of them had ended on the beat. Like it was always. So I tried sometimes displacing it not by a whole beat, but by half a beat, and I came up with. Etc. And I want to thank all the guys who played with me in my recital: Daniel, Joe, Robert, and Paul. I'm especially glad I got Paul Melland on the tenor sax, because, as I said in a previous video, he has a crazy bop way of playing, for want of a better word, that isn't a reflection of his personality at all. So I'm glad I got him in that. So that is it for monkeying around. I think I've monkeyed around long enough with it. So I will see you on Wednesday for the next song from the recital, but I'll be posting another video before that. But until next time, Gafaba.